We've been working to save and restore a very special place, full of wonderful species that exist nowhere else on Earth. And to do so, we've been resorting to some exciting technology, as well as some pretty extreme interventions.
The essence of this project is quite simple. We have these two super rare, narrow endemic plant species that grow only here, only on these cliffs, nowhere else on Earth. We have this vine here that twirls nicely over the native plants and also climbs the rocks of the sheer cliff faces. And this, which is a subsucculent shrub that can pretty much grow out of bare rock. It's really impressive. So both of these plants are amazing and wonderful in their own right, but they have a problem. They're being overrun by one of the worst invasive plant species at a global level, which is the Iceplant. So our project, naturally, is to try to rip out this Iceplant. And lucky for us, it's quite easy to rip it out actually. It's pretty simple. You just pull and it comes out. But the problem is that we are working here. This is a pretty tricky environment to operate in. We've had to learn to use drones and AI to identify the areas with invasives so that we then can access them from the top of the cliff using ropes to rip them out and take them out for good. So in this video today, I want to catch you up on 2 years worth of progress on this project and of course tell you all about this wonderful and often ignored cliff ecosystem.
These impressive cliffs are located here, just south of Lisbon. They're formed out of limestone, and in a coastline that faces west, they're quite uniquely facing the south, which traps the heat and creates a special microclimate.
It's always wonderfully warm down here, even on a foggy day like today. And it's actually November 19th today, and I'm wearing t-shirt and shorts. And at the top of the cliff, I had to wear a jacket. So this microclimate really checks out. But in addition to that, there's also the steepness of these cliffs, which essentially means that humans probably never fully transformed this area, which in our day and age is quite a rare thing.
As you can see in this shot here, the agricultural fields on the top never really extended all the way to the cliff areas. And part of this is because they are steep, but above all, this steepness leads to a terrible lack of soil.
And this sad, dry-looking soil might sound like a bad thing, but as with most things, it really depends on your perspective. So if you're an oak, sure, this is a terrible place to try and grow. But for some other plants, it represented an opportunity to find some space to flourish. So they have adapted, and that is how we ended up with all of these narrow endemic species.
And just to prove that point, we can look at this flat area here, right next to the steep cliffs. Here, the soil doesn't wash away as much, and there is natural succession happening, which means that it is dominated by bushes, like the stivas, and trees, like the cypresses and the Kermes oak. The point is that these plants live in a super niche environment, and there are two species that are particularly rare and exist only in the cliffs that you can see in this shot.
So this is Euphorbia pedroi, and it is a subsucculent shrub, which means that it can store a lot of water, and that is of course how it survives in this dry environment.
It takes this to the extreme in the summer, when it gets rid of most of its leaves to help conserve water, and we found them growing in all sorts of different and extreme places.
I really love how much these plants look like a small bonsai, but when you touch them, they're actually quite bendy and not woody.
And the way they reproduce is by explosive seed dispersal, which then gets picked up by ants and moved around.
And this here is Convolvulus fernandesi, and it is a species of vine that grows by twining over other plants as well as climbing over rocks.
We found it climbing over all kinds of different plant species, as well as bare rock. And in the spring, it has these beautiful white flowers, which gives them an ethereal look. This vine has some distant cousins in other islands in Macaronesia, which is comprised of these archipelagos. However, these days, there is no suitable habitat for them within their dispersal range, so they're effectively stuck here. which wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't being overrun by Iceplant. And to properly introduce you to them, I asked Mats, the other co-founder of Mossy Earth, to show you how it covers the cliffs down south, where he lives.
I actually have a bit of a love-hate relationship with the ice plant. Now, on the one hand, I know it can be bad for biodiversity, but on the other hand, I'm kind of used to it being here at the beach, and I think it looks kind of cool the way it cascades down these rocks behind me. And also this time of year, the yellow fruit gives off this really sweet strawberry aroma, and the fruits are edible. Simply tear off the head, squeeze the base of the fruit, and then suck down all that brown gooey liquid. Nice.
But despite its seemingly okay taste, this succulent from South Africa is one of the worst invasives there is. It is well documented to cause complete changes in the coastal plant structure, and it does so by changing the soil moisture content, the salinity, and the pH to suit itself, but making it unbearable for other plants. And before you think that we are just iceplant haters, I want to show you how much it has spread globally and where it is at the moment. And then here, you can see the range of the convolvulus and the euphorbia. I think the picture says it all. So at some point in 2020, Tiago, one of our biologists, learned about the special narrow endemic plants, and he went looking for them. And what he found was this. They were completely overrun by iceplant.
So we were looking for project ideas, and I learned about these endemic plants that exist only on these cliffs, which is a place that I spend a lot of time in. I come climbing here. And so I started coming on hikes trying to find these endemic plants. And on one of those hikes, we came to this spot where we are now. And we found the euphorbia, and we found it being surrounded by the invasive ice plant. And that was immediately a bit of a light bulb moment, because it was, here's something we can do to help these plants. And then seeing them also on the cliffs, it was obvious that perhaps the best way to do this would be to actually get the local climbers involved and to have them help us out and also learn about all of these interesting things about the plants that exist here.
When it starts growing and spreading, the ice plant can destroy a habitat quite fast. So Tiago decided to act quick and get a project together. He reached out to Sociedade Portuguesa de Botânica to help build the proposal, and after submitting, he got the green light from ICNF, the local park authorities, allowing him to be able to work in this protected area. The first step was to try and map each area, to understand where the ice plant was and also where the endangered plants were, and the best tool for this was a drone. We started off by using the Phantom 4 drone together with the Pix4D software, which the company licensed to us for free, which is super cool, and it has been a big help across our different projects. And to make sense of the results, we got some help from Jakob, a pretty dedicated Mossy Earth member.
So what the process is from here is that I am delivered a map from Mossy Earth, and then I will segment the map into a lot of these small polygons, as you can see here. And these polygons are segmented by the algorithm looks at the color and the shape of this picture, and then determines a lot of small polygons to segment it into. And when this has been done, I will then manually look at the image and I will classify, give it some examples of for example, this euphorbia plant here, and this one here, and this one here. And then I will feed these examples into the algorithm. And the algorithm is then able to process these examples that I give it. And then it's able to give us a map like this.
He then further refines this by adding some points in the center of the polygon and then congregating them to a single point per bush to finally create this heat map here. This process can then be repeated for other endemics and also invasives. Over time, we found that this was a great way to map euphorbias and find ice plants, but the convolvulus was a bit trickier. We also have pretty restricted flying times due to the falcons that breed on these cliffs, but it is of course really important not to disturb them. When the time finally came to get working, we got all the help we needed from the local community, with people such as Francisco, who is a self-taught naturalist who wrote several books on the flora and the caves of the area. He was an invaluable resource to help us navigate these cliff ecosystems. And then we also got a ton of help from the climbing community. You see, these cliffs here are quite the climbing paradise because of all this lovely limestone, and climbers spend a lot of time here. This has meant that it is crucial to have them on board, so we try to reach as many climbers as possible and ask them to spread the word about the situation and our project.
A esmagadora maioria da comunidade escaladora que frequenta o Cabo Especial já está sensibilizada e consciente do problema e da necessidade de proteger estas plantas nativas, porque esta iniciativa teve um impacto mediático grande e de passa a palavra, que funciona também muito bem neste local.
Our message was well received and willingly distributed, which means that in the future we can count on the climbing community to help us keep an eye on the Iceplant and also be mindful of the protected species as they create new climbing routes and access paths. As time passed, our removal events started to make a dent in the problem, but the Iceplant is also quite capable of cascading down cliffs, which is why the next step was to get our climbing gear and attack them on the cliff face.
Now, before we show you the vertical removals, I think some of you might be wondering, why do we care so much about these particular plants? I mean, these plants are so picky, they have such a difficult life, and they are so easily beaten by these plants. Why not just let them be and let it be done? And I think I have the perfect example for you.
So, when learning more about the euphorbia, we found out that there is some ongoing research looking at molecules extracted from this plant that have the potential to help treat multi-drug resistant cancers. Now that's pretty cool.
So it isn't always obvious why a particular species is worth preserving, but what is abundantly clear is that uniqueness and diversity are really worth protecting in the long run, especially from human-introduced threats like the ice plant. And that is why I'm so happy that here at Mossy Earth we get to spend the time to pay attention to these species and also to do something about it. And the only reason we can do something is because of our Mossy Earth membership.
We essentially have a monthly subscription that you can sign up to, and we will then use the money that we gather from our members to implement projects that range from coral reef restoration to ground squirrel reintroductions, regreening volcanic deserts, and even rewilding this fragile bit of land we bought in the Amazon. All our work will be visible through reports in your account, through these update videos here on YouTube, and also our lovely monthly field report. And if you want to dig a bit deeper, we post a quarterly financial report as well as all our major project transactions on our website in the transparency section.
So if you'd like to support our work, if you'd like to support this project and all the other projects that we do, then please consider heading over to mossy.earth. And if you just want to learn a bit more about our membership, then you can also watch the channel trailer here on the YouTube channel. Now let's get on with the vertical removals.
So we are here at our project area in Portugal, the sea cliffs of Cabo Especial, and we've been doing some invasive plant removal work at the cliffs. This is the fourth day we're doing this, and so I'm here with Ollie. He's our rope wizard. Who's responsible for all the complex things we have to do with ropes. Ollie, how often do you reckon we've gone down this path by now?
Too many times. Do I need to elaborate on that?
So we're walking down to access the cliff area now. One of the challenges of working in this area is that we have to come down this little path every time, carrying all the gear with us. Yeah, so we'll just be going along here, and there's some sections where you don't have ice plant, and then others where you have some big patches, and that's where we'll have to abseil down. Which I'm going to use to get to that patch down there. And Ollie's already busy setting up the next anchor. And we're making the most of the last bits of sunlight. So as we're going down, we have to be quite careful because this is one of the places where we have both the euphorbia and the ice plant. So as you can see, there's like these little baby euphorbias dotting the cliff. And so we need to be careful not to step on them, and also that the rope doesn't hit them. So that's the first tiny patch of ice plant removed today. We have a lot to go, but we got started. So far so good. We have a good group of volunteers here today, so it means there's several people working at the same time. So it's just a matter of managing all of that, but we've already got some of the patches done, and we just gotta keep going while we have sunlight. So yeah, one of the things we're finding here along the cliffs as well is that there's a lot of trash, both in the middle of the ice plant and just lying around. As you can see here, a bunch of beer bottles. And yeah, we do try and collect what we can, but we might need to come back with more volunteers to help clean the cliffs. So this is one of the patches that we managed to remove yesterday with the help of our volunteers. And what we do is that we put them on a pile here with the roots facing up so that they dry out. And behind me here, we have an area where we had one of these piles and it's dried out and all of them are dead, which is exactly what we want. And now we'll just have to wait and make sure that the same happens with the other piles. Just finished working on this cliff section. Ollie's in the back there, removing one of the anchors, and we're just gonna keep going east, and whenever we find another patch of ice plant, we'll just build another anchor and take care of that. I always find it really amazing that we have people who just decide to spend their Sunday helping these little plants, and I think they're enjoying it as well. So I'm really happy that people also get to know this place. If you check out the views, it's incredible, and sharing that is really cool. So we're just wrapping up for the day. It was our last day this week of removing ice plant from the cliffs, and we've made great progress. I think we covered probably some 800 meters or so of coastline, and there's still work to do, but it was a great week of progress.
In total, we cleaned up around 25,000 square meters across 900 meters of coastline. And if you'd like to see more of this work, we've just launched a new channel called Mossy Earth Field Notes. Here you'll find project discussion videos and vlogs, such as this one, where Adriana visits our flooded forest during the biggest flood recorded to date. Or Tiago's adventures cleaning up these cliffs together with Francisco, João, Ollie and all these other characters. These videos are not narrated and the editing is very light, so you'll see a lot more of what happens on the ground. Some will be quite short and some will be long, if it makes sense. This will essentially be our low-pressure YouTube channel for those who want to dive deep into our projects. Now, when the vertical removals happened, one thing became clear. The Phantom drone did not work when it came to mapping the vertical areas, so Tiago shipped it off to Islay to map seagrass in Scotland, which generally tends to be nice and flat. And then he got himself an upgrade that was a bit more suited to the job. And so he continued to spend some time going up and down the cliff, often on his own at weird times to try and continue the mapping and plan where to strike next. And this is when João came into the picture. He reached out to us to do an internship and a master thesis on one of our projects, and we've been putting him to good use.
So what do you have to say about the conditions now?
I think it's not meant to be today, that we will fully map the cliffs. The rain is not on our side.
And then there were two of them, going up and down the cliffs day and night, seemingly in all kinds of weather, to continue all of the mapping and discuss the ins and outs of trying to do so in this super steep environment. And during their walks, they also found many other interesting things, such as this caterpillar, which fed exclusively on euphorbia, which is another argument in the you never know why they're important list. But João's work will also be looking at the future.
I'm trying to map the cliffs, and with that I will try to understand what are the specific characteristics that those endangered plants need to live. Because as you can see right behind me, there are no endangered plants, and I want to figure out what are the characteristics that make them live in those places, in the cliffs, and not right here, for example.
This work will help us figure out the status of the endangered plants, and will also lead to the creation of an ecological niche model, which will essentially tell us what these plants need to live, and that could open the door to some potential propagation and reintroduction ideas, assuming we find new areas that match the ones that they like over here.
This is one of the most beautiful and unique places that I know, so to be able to work to protect and preserve it, it's just absolutely mind-blowing. It's incredible. So a huge thank you to everyone who's been breaking their backs to remove the ice plant and help protect these species, and a huge thank you to our Mossy Earth members that make all of this possible. We'll be keeping you posted with the regeneration of the native flora and with our progress in this project. So I hope you'll stick around. Until next time. Cheers!